Good evening. I actually just got a real email from Seth Rogen. He's been at home for a half an hour, and he's in his underwear and already high and laughing at all of us. So when I was 25 years old, I was doing theater in New York, and I got brought out here for the first time to screen test for a film called Primal Fear, and I was so convinced that I wouldn't get it that I was adding up the $75 a day per diem and figuring if I could stretch the stay in Hollywood to 4 or 5 days, I could maybe cover half my month's rent or something like that. I was nervous, as one is when presented with that kind of an opportunity, and I decided to go and watch some of the films of the star of this film I was going to audition for, Richard Gere. And I looked at American Gigolo, and I looked at An Officer and a Gentleman, and The Cotton Club, Internal Affairs. These are all films I had seen and been very affected by in my younger years. And I remember thinking that this was going to go great because this guy was so strong in these types of roles and was going to be so perfect in this role of this slick, cynical lawyer in this new film that I was just going to push everything else to the side and look for that guy and play off of him. And I thought it gave me a certain amount of confidence that there was going to be this anchor in him that I could find and that the scene would go great. So I got to stage 5 at Paramount, and they had it all set up, and I sat there. I kept waiting for that guy to emerge, and I looked over, and he wasn't anywhere around, and by the camera, instead, they had this guy with kind of long, unwashed hair in a tattered T-shirt with a bunch of prayer beads around his hand and torn jeans. And I thought, shit, they have pulled some out-of-work hippie out of Topanga Canyon and brought him in to read this scene with me because Gere's not going to do this with some unknown kid from New York. And I thought, I'm screwed. And then he looked up, and I realized that it was Richard, just back from Dharamsala or wherever he'd been traipsing around. And he kind of gave me this look, and he said, "Hi, I'm Richard. This is going to go great. If there's anything you need, if there's anything you want from me, just tell me." And I was so struck by that, and I kind of focused in, and we did the thing, and I was lucky enough to get that job. And I tell that story because I think there are a few things that don't get said enough about Richard. The first is that what's emblematic about that story to me is that Richard has always been a character actor in the skin of a leading man. He's always been, he's a bohemian, he's a singer, he's a musician, he's a humanitarian, he's a soft-spoken, gentle, very caring guy who has become iconic for playing almost exactly the opposite. And as a result, people underestimate the level of transformation that he's delivering in creating characters like Martin Vale in Primal Fear. It's so far from who he actually is, and it's incredible what he does to put on that character. The second is that he is an unfailingly generous collaborator who, in film after film, makes his co-stars shine and look good. Think about, apart from how good he made me look in Primal Fear, the way that Diane Lane comes off in Unfaithful, the way that Julia Roberts comes off in Pretty Woman. He is always the anchor of a film making co-stars shine. And that's not just the way the scripts are written, it's the humility with which Richard approaches roles, the understatement with which he grounds them, and the generosity with which he acts with other actors. And the third piece of inspiration, which I take from him, is that as a human being, he has really set the standard, I think, for how you can take the vacuous kind of silliness of celebrity and find something substantive in it and make the world a better place through it. His work as a humanitarian is almost unparalleled. The level of commitment that he has put into his work for Tibet and so many other humanitarian causes, I think, is a strong standard and inspiration for people of my generation in terms of trying to figure out and navigate this strange thing of becoming well known for something that you do and figuring out how to do something good with it. So I think for all of those reasons, it's very, very fitting to celebrate the incredible career of Richard Gere, spanning literally classic films like Days of Heaven, all the way through to this fantastic performance in Arbitrage that he gives this year, and which I watched last night and is just absolutely brilliant. So it's a great pleasure for me to stand in for so many other actors who have had the pleasure of working with him, who have been supported by him and encouraged by him. And it's an incredible pleasure to say thank you to Richard for the support he's given me personally and so many others, and to present this Lifetime Achievement Award from the LA Times, Eddie Hartenstein.